Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and it is time for our block of the month or our round of the month called Checkmate. Last month we did make this big center square with that very first border. And this month we're going to work on that next round, and it does consist of some flying geese. Now, I have a way of making the flying geese that is probably a little bit different than you have ever seen. It's not so much on how it is sewn, it's how it is pressed. And this technique ensures that our points always stay pointy, not only in the center, but on the sides. It's one extra step on pressing, but it really makes a difference on all of those beautiful points. So let's get started on our flying geese. Now there are many different ways that we can make flying geese, but I really like the stitch and flip method. But I do have a little trick on that stitch and flip method. So for today's pieces, we are going to need 48 3-inch squares, 24 3-inch by 5.5 inch. And on all of these, we are going to need to draw a line from corner to corner. So the method I want to share with you today is still a stitch and flip method, but it's all about the pressing, and it's going to make it so those flying geese sit flat. And all of those points are going to match up precisely. So we're going to do one corner at a time. You're going to place that square on, and you're going to stitch right on that line from one corner going right down to the other. I do like to make my stitches a little bit smaller. Now to press, I'm going to take the two white and hold them together, and then fold that black together. And I just make sure that those seams are nice and flat with my fingers first, and I'll feel if there's any overlapping, and then I give that a press. Now, if you'd like to give it a test, keep the two whites together and fold back that black. That corner should be nice and square. Now I want to trim a seam allowance. So I'm going to take that back black and white and open that back up just like I had originally sewn it. Now I can trim that 1/4 inch. By pressing it this way, when I open it up, that seam has been pressed open and it did not stretch out of shape. I'm going to sew on that next corner. I'm going to do that small row of stitching, and I do like to start stitching right here. And that way I don't have any chance of that little point stretching. And I'm following right on that center line. And I'm going to repeat that pressing by folding that black in half and the black to the back and press. And then I'm going to take apart the little point. So when we fold this down, you can see we're going to have that little triangle right here up at the top. I'm going to loosen this seam so that that white point is following its seam line. And we do this a lot when we do a 4-patch on the back. I do not trim those threads. I just undo that little part. And then I'm going to go back and just give that a press so it is facing up. So this seam is now flat all the way up to that point. And we still have that fabric folded and the white corners are together, but we've released pressure with this point. Now we can trim. So we're going to take those two backs, make sure that white is to the front, and we're going to trim that seam allowance now. So both of those black seams are pointing down. Both of my white are pointing up. We are now going to be able to sew these together in rows of 3. It's still 3 inches by 5.5 inches. We're going to match them together. And you're going to stitch so you're looking at that point. And you want to stitch one thread over from that point and continue. So that is what that point looks like. That black piece was not stitched down. We have that white little piece up at the top, and the stitching came just almost to that top. We can trim a little bit of this point off. So it's only going to be a little bit. So I now have about 1/8 of a seam allowance. Now this seems to be a little bit fussy this stage, but it is worth it. When we open this up, we are going to be able to press this down. Pressing that down means we have these corners that we're going to be able to use to sew with, because we're going to see those intersections. And there is less bulk here. It is going to press down really easily. So this has been pressed and you can see how it really just stays down. It's because there's less bulk here. And when we turn it over, we have a perfect point every single time. Take and sew that third one on. And when we finish pressing, look how flat this seam is. Even when you're looking at it on an angle, these points are very, very flat. You can see how flat those points are. So it is an extra step, but those flat points and that flat piece is definitely worth it. So we are going to need 8 of these units, and that's all we're going to do for this month, so we can take our time and do those beautiful little points. And this is all we're going to need for this month's block of the month. Now, having those seams opened and pressed flat in the back really can make a big difference on how these are going to lie together and how we're going to be able to stitch them together in the next row. Now, it is not a hard way of doing the blocks. When we put the 2 whites together and press them that way, we've already pressed those seams open and flat, so we're not having to manipulate our iron to open up a tiny 1/4 inch seam. We have the whole blocks that make it easy. And next month, we are going to make some other blocks to finish that border, and we're going to put the next border together. Be sure to check out the links in the description so you know when the next video is coming up. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I do have a newsletter. It's all free under Sew Very Easy. And be sure to make every day a Sewtacular day. Bye for now.